Internet, welcome back. Still riding out the apocalypse? Good, because it's time for more Disco Elysium. My apologies for the delay. Apart from the coronavirus outbreak adding a big dollop of chaos on top of everything, I got sucked into Factorio, been playing the Resident Evil 3 remake, the Russian Lost Belt and Fate Grand Order came out. Turns out, video games are still coming out, and they're still pretty good. Who knew? Doing my best to get back on track, so let's get to it. Now, last time we discovered that the Union was facilitating drug shipments through their harbor. The Hardys are personally involved, and one of their drivers was present at the hanging. We learned that the surviving mercenaries are plotting revenge, and most importantly, we gained an audience with the alleged victim of the deceased. A lot of back and forth tonight, so bear with me while I start piecing together what the hell's going on. And we start with Miss Aranya Disco Dancer herself. Now, all I did off camera this time is put that spare point in Volition, but I forgot to mention last time I figured out how the damn bottle thing works. You equip the bag and you can actually pick up bottles you find lying in the street, and you sell the ones you collect at the Fritz store. It's amazing the things you can learn when you read the instructions, I tell you what. So, I scrounged up a few more bucks, and I'll do that periodically between episodes where time permits. She's been here a while, and has racked up a sizable pill collection. Kim recognizes the nasal spray as an opioid treatment. Electrochemistry has an easy check here. Oh, our vice boy wants a piece of this thing. Prescription speed, apparently. Girl looks like she could give us a run for our money. We have the option to steal it, though our odds have gone down since we told Kim about it. Which is fine, we're not going to be doing that. To be clear, it's the drugs I object to, not the stealing. This is an RPG, stealing is mandatory. It figures she gets the room with the loft. Nice place, though. I spot something curious about the window. How clean it looks compared to the one next to it. I didn't pay attention at the time, but you'll note the background noise is the same for other moments of visual calculus. We'll get back to that. All we know right now is that the window has been replaced, and recently. Yeah, thanks, game. Where was that when I was paying attention? There she is. Always push buttons first. Those are the rules. Hello, what's this? Oh god, 72. Yeah. Whoop-ha! I am a flower ninja, apparently. That's right, stand in envy of my basic motor skills. Now, what did I grab again? Apparently, something worth an interact button. Let's have a look. The flower has some historical significance. Called May bells, they were a symbol of the Revolution, and the use of them as such dates back even further. Unusually, it looks like this flower has been preserved. It's not yet in season. Might just be a coincidence, but we'll see. Alright, enough stalling. Let's introduce ourselves properly this time.
Welcome to the roof.
Caught her on her coffee break between dealing with drunken morons.
I'm sorry for the mess down there. The cleaning lady hasn't come by in days. I'm beginning to wonder if she ever will. Oh yes, legends of room number 1 have made their way around the building. They say a portal to hell is opened in there. I know. That's probably also why the cleaning lady quit.
I'm Kim Kitsuragi. I'm a detective from Precinct 57. I believe you have already met my colleague from Precinct 41.
Have I ever? This is the biggest fan of ostentatious orchestrations I have ever seen in my life, and I have seen a few. Oh yeah, life gets hard, but we go on.
Must be drinking decaf.
I can see that. I'm glad all this onward going has brought you to me.
Miss, we are investigating the murder of the man down there. The people who put him there have asked us to talk to you.
Ah, I see.
Suggestion reminds us to play nice. Start with something simple. Good idea to establish some basic details. Name, where she lives, age. As the descriptor implies, she's from Oranje, and doesn't seem to have fond memories of the place. Always night there gives an idea of her preferred waking hours. She gives the impression she's been all about partying for a long time. So she at least went to university, studied literature, though like countless arts degrees, it isn't quite her day job. The world's most tired smile. Yeah, for a 28-year-old, she's had a long life, drifting from one job to the next, mostly living day to day. Electrochemistry is nothing if not consistent, insisting we ask about what turns out to be a beauty pageant at the age of 14, half her life ago. You could at least tell me where you got the coffee. I was asking about that earlier. I will note, in what is probably a coincidence, that the strike started back in December. So she came here specifically because Martinez is a slum, and it sounds like she just wanted to disappear for a while. I try to encourage her, but even now we can tell that there's some serious damage behind that smirk. Suggestion and authority play good cop, bad cop. Sorry, authority, there can be only one. She's pretty blunt about her drug habit, all told. Admits to overdosing on opioids, goes hard on trucker speed just to enjoy herself. Seems like she's basically disco Keith Richards. Not much to say about the new window. She would have been here long enough to see it replaced. Kim finds that curious. On to the elephant in the room. She's not one to mince words, but not out of being curt. She just doesn't seem bothered by the question. Empathy doubles down. She's not even blinking at the thought of it. And as we suspected going into this, she claims not only that the deceased didn't assault her, but that the charge is made up entirely. Presumably by the Hardy Boys. She wasn't explicitly told to do this, but seems under the impression that they wanted something more damaging than what they had, something that would justify a lynch mob. She's claiming she can out-party the expression. I don't know, man. Let's not make arguments our cocaine supply can't keep. So we're in a weird situation here. She's claiming the Hardys expected her to make up charges against the mercenary, when in fact, if she's being straight with us, their relationship was entirely consensual. A little unhealthy, what with the drugs and all, but nothing more than two damaged people having fun together. If we're to believe suggestion and empathy, she honestly seems to like the guy, if buried under years of nihilism and numbness. She's bitter at having a front row seat the whole time. The body had been there for a week when the game started. And something clicks for Kim. He realizes she's the one that called us. Like the rest of Martinez, she's worried about being seen as a snitch, but the sight of him hanging there for days got to her. She even figured out how to disguise her voice, in part by damaging the landline a bit. And logic figures out that she's the one that cut the line. On accident. It wasn't malicious, it was just her trying not to sound like her. Logic is actually bolstered by that, and interfacing tells us it's a clever bit of sabotage. She had some idea what she was doing. and she makes it sound like the Union has phone lines in the area bugged, which, considering they act like they own the place, could very well be true. Now, of course, a victim would be uncomfortable talking about what happened, especially if they feared reprisal from the accused, but that's not what's happening here. The accused is dead, and the alleged victim is saying not just that it didn't happen, but also the person who said it did asked her to lie about it. We know Titus is lying about what else happened that night, and by his own admission also had sex with her, creating a conflict of interest. And all that assumes we can take anyone's word at face value, which we can't. We know the mercenary was shot at some point, undoubtedly the fatal injury. That makes every story questionable. She claimed she was downstairs when the Hardy Boys attacked him, that she didn't know he'd been shot and thought it was a hanging like we did. But from the witness testimony and footprints at the scene, we know he was carried out and must have been incapacitated. If she didn't know about the bullet, then the shooting would have happened after the last time she saw him. They certainly didn't shoot him in front of her, and it couldn't have happened in the yard either. She believes, or thinks she knows, that jealousy wasn't the motive for the killing. But it is probably the reason for the cover story. In spite of the subtext, she's probably not lying about whether any of these relationships were consensual, but we can't completely go by what she's saying either. We're missing a key piece of the puzzle here. A volition check pops up when I go to ask about the flower. Now, it's our old nemesis 72%, but we'll try it in a sec. Possible deflection, or maybe she's just got nothing to say about the flower. It probably didn't blow up here, but not worth pressing for now. Back to the check. What do you say, 72? We gonna do this thing? We are indeed. Volition seems to admire the view, but it's got nothing new to say about her. But it does have some bad news. About us. About the thoughts in our head. Our thoughts are compromised. It was evident right from the start, given the chance to hit on her minutes after waking up. Hobocop is attracted to her, and it's clouding his judgment. Volition knows she's bullshitting us about something, but none of them can be trusted. Especially electrochemistry. Glory, truth, softness. Oh, man. Don't get me wrong, I know that feeling all too well. I mean, if, say for instance, Yu Asakawa, the voice actress for Medusa in the Fate series, if I met her in person, I'd have trouble pronouncing my own name, let alone complimenting her skill at Dark Souls. I get it, man, I do. But we're trying to solve a murder here. Of, I remind you, the last guy she slept with. Let's focus a bit, shall we? So yeah, this is a woman used to using sex appeal as a weapon, and is messing with our ability to think clearly. Drama believes everything she says. Suggestion thinks Volition is jealous. Electrochemistry just wants making fuck. This doesn't mean we can't make use of them, and we don't know just from that she's lying. She could just be omitting certain details. But when it comes to her, we'll have to deduce the truth from what else we know. Logic's point, at least, has merit. Her own story might complicate things and she doesn't want to incriminate herself, but it's not something we can use to explain her part in all this. We'll keep this under our hat for now. Like Volition says, it's better to know we're being played than to not know. Interesting side note, Volition says it's only been about 4 seconds, but time still passes normally. It's actually been about 10 minutes. You can see the clock ticking over. Let's see what Kim says about all this.
Looks like we have more to discuss with those so-called Hardy Boys. Half their reasoning just went out the window.
Whatever's really going on, the Hardys were hoping she'd stick to the script, which means we owe them another visit. It's hard to say why she told us the truth, or at least part of it. It's possible she just didn't want to go along with this part of the plan. We don't know enough to be sure. I admit to Kim that she's got my thoughts in a whirl, and it's hard to make a clear judgment about her. He actually backs up Volition's point. Putting forward some truths can draw attention away from others. Fortunately, Kim's harder to fool. That might just be conceit talking, but let's be real. That's the absolute last word I would use to describe him. More to the point, we know more than anybody expected us to. Between the two of us, we should be able to peel through the layers of bullshit here. I noticed this door off to the side, probably a service entrance or something. Can't see a lock on it, and there's definitely no chance of forcing it open. Kim notes that everything about this case so far is circled around the whirling. We should definitely look around more when we get the chance. Barred from the other side. Must be another way in. Yeah, well, we'll be back. It's time to meet the Hardys again. Get the feeling Titus isn't going to be happy that Clausier isn't going along with his story. Obviously they're covering something up, but what she said might also be true, that there's some alpha male posturing here. They might not have killed the mercenary, but Titus was more than happy to make him look as guilty as possible. Titus, buddy, we gotta stop meeting like this.
It's you again. What is it?
He reacts in a suitably restrained manner. Yeah, there's some hurt feelings here. Saying it doesn't make it so, Todd. Do you at least have a more credible lie you can tell? The irony is thick here. They're saying she's crazy because she's not going along with their story. Hell of a way to talk about a girl they're supposedly trying to help. Things are getting tense here. Titus is about to blow a gasket. Ah, shit, here we go. Or not. Elizabeth has some authority of her own. She's here to keep them out of jail, but fuck-ups aren't tolerated. Now what's all this then? Todd's trying to give us some dirt on the victim. The actual victim. Supposedly this tape of theirs is a confession from the mercenary. In one sense, we don't really need to take this seriously. There's no evidence the crime happened, and a pretty clear statement to the contrary. But in another sense, they've clearly invested a lot into the story. We might as well follow this thread all the way. So they've been listening in on the mercenaries for some time. Interesting. Little discrepancy here. Angus is writing down what they say, but they have a tape recording. I'm assuming they got a mic working at some point. We'll need a tape player, and I think we can assume the one in our room is smashed up like the rest of it. Yeah, I'm sure this is just as bulletproof as the rest of your story. If this thing was as airtight as they think it is, they would lead with this evidence. They would be dying to show it to us. Instead, Titus had to be reminded of it. Still, Inland Empire thinks there's something of value here. Might as well take a listen. We'll need a tape player, though.
Yes?
I thought Kim might have some further input, but the most likely place we're getting one is the pawn shop. Let's head on over. Roy, my dude. Need to play some evidence.
Hello, hello. Let me know if I can help you with anything.
Sure enough, he's got just the thing. He says they're on the shelves, but it's actually right above his booth. You can actually see the real players up close. We can afford the 12 real, but just barely. Since it's police business, let's see if we can work something out. Conceptualization has an idea. This door gunner megamix might just be disco enough for him to knock a few bucks off. Just gotta upsell it a wee bit. Aw, see, I knew Roy was a bro. Thanks, man. For real it is. Now, the boombox works like a tool of sorts. We equip this, and it lets us listen to the tape. It's funny because cassette tapes date back to the 60s, but this thing is kind of a stylized reel-to-reel player. And now we got this background beat wherever we go. Sick. Well, let's give her a listen. Fucking hell. Editing, guys, you gotta cut out the noise. Making a mixtape is a lost art, I swear. Kim recognizes the crane sound. Cordy, one of the mercenaries, the scab leader. Well, it figures we're not hearing Boy Scouts on this thing. Soldier of the Apocalypse and Cahoy style are rather worrying, and these sound like some pretty clear threats. But Kim thinks we're getting a selective recording. This could easily be a couple of violent jarheads with PTSD on guard duty, just talking shit. Esprit de Corps interprets, there's more to the story, even if this isn't the magic bullet Titus thinks it is. As for Cahoy, the Vietnam parallels are pretty clear-cut, though this time it seems like a lot of the fighting and the war crimes were done by mercenaries. It appears our dead man may have been there. Soldier of the Apocalypse could reflect on what they have in mind for Martinez. Clausier didn't seem moved at all by the charges, but we should at least ask her about the tape. Empathy, not a fan of serious crime solving with what sounds like some kind of house beat. Come on, where's your sense of contrast? I was curious if this would play continuously, since it seems to taper off there, but honestly I just enjoy the idea of a cop running around with a boombox, so I kept it on for a while, figuring some people might have some stuff to say with it on.
Yes?
Kim has no reaction, however. Ah, you're no fun. Feeling this beat, though. It's got some energy to it. Fuck you guys, I'm learning the truth. Yeah, I know you're lying, but I'm in over my head. Yeah, we're all gonna die. That's my first single. I call it Slowly Turning into Macho Man Randy Savage in G minor. Didn't get much mainstream airplay, which is to say, any airplay. Ah, whatever. Radio's dead. Bunch of Philistines out there. Now, I briefly thought I needed this equipped to play the tape for her, but by now I was mostly committed to the idea of questioning Clausier further with a boombox on my shoulder. Come on, if anybody in this town would appreciate it, it'd be her. Now what's this nonsense I heard about partying harder than me, huh?
I was just thinking, what a nice day for questions pertaining to a murder investigation.
Turns out we don't actually play the tape for her, we just kind of tell her what's on it. And in fact, she's not at all surprised by this. She knows he was no angel, just that he never hurt her. She seems to know the exact words on the tape despite not hearing it. Knows about Soldier of the Apocalypse and seems to think it was just a thing he said often. She also knows about doing it Cahoy style. And drops the little bomb that he was never there, which is a pretty big detail for him to be lying about. While he clearly had a history of combat and violence, she seems to think a lot of his attitude was just that, attitude. Rather than intimidated by it, she seems into that kind of thing. He acted like a guy who'd seen and done the worst, but the worst was used for jokes and pickup lines. If he was never at Cahoy, then one has to ask where he actually was, and how much of his service was part of a tough guy persona. If she's being truthful here, it sounds like he was weirdly content with her. Despite her compromised skill set, logic points out that she may be ready to tell us more about him now. Worth a try before we go back. His nickname, Lely, came from Lelystad, his hometown. He never gave her his real name. Lot of questions. Let's go down the list. So he was from Aranye, a small town. Kim's comparing how accurate our guesses were from the autopsy. So he was a soldier, but not particularly patriotic. Sounds like his service disillusioned him, and he, shall we say, took his skill set into the private sector. Something else that might have brought them together. A shared loathing of Mother Aranye. "42. I was bang on the autopsy. And here I thought Kim wasn't the competitive sort, but there's definitely a playful side to him. Clausier's picking up on the competition. Or maybe some sexual tension, who knows. Hey, don't act like that's just me. We had that moment on the balcony and everything. Anyway, moving on. The way she describes him is clearly affectionate. It was a booze and drug-filled relationship, but it might be like she says. Just two damaged strangers finding a moment of peace together. We should be so lucky, right? He artificially darkened his hair. Interesting. I don't remember mentioning brilliantine. I went back and watched the autopsy, but it never came up. Now for the tattoo. She knows what it's supposed to mean, but she acts like it's a thing he used as part of the persona. It's a thing to show off in private, get her asking questions, get her to touch the stars and ask what they mean, and to tell an intense story about each one. In case it's not clear, she's talking about herself, her reaction to them. So he definitely fought in Seminine and other countries, but the tattoo is more the story about himself that he was trying to tell. It's lies wrapped around the truth, like everything else in this case. Take a moment to appreciate the boombox still going. Anyway, we have a chance to ask her about the Inland Empire stuff, to ask how close Hobocop's weird hunches are. Titus seemed to think there's a bit of truth to it, and she's quick to answer without really knowing what we mean. Volition's trying to keep her off balance. The obvious implication is that he might have been having sex or something when he died. Or he could just be going crazy, and crazy's a little more reliable than most of our other tools right now. Drama's a little hasty too, and Volition calls it out. There is something she's not telling us, we just can't be sure what. Still, let's not get bogged down with autopsy procedure. We got the important part for now. She didn't react at all to the tape. Thought bubble gets visual calculus talking about the dead man's age. I gotta admit, 42 is not that far away from me age-wise, and I'm not handling that very well, gotta be honest. But the burning question is, how old is our man Hobocop? I doubt asking them to guess would be terribly productive, but guessing is all we have, really. Without any ID, we don't have a date of birth, and God only knows where that puts us. Tempting to believe he's in his early 30s, but we know it's gonna be older, just not exactly how much older. Fuck it, let's find this shit out. And that unlocks a thought. And so happens, we leveled up from that conversation and have a point to play with. No penalties and no benefits while we're studying this, so there's no harm for now. Let's do it. I'm not sure if the lines connecting the thoughts mean anything or what, if there's some kind of dependency that becomes an issue when you unlearn a thought. Might try that later just to see what happens. So yeah, the tape changes nothing, and all the Soldier of the Apocalypse talk looks like it was just that. This isn't to say our dead mercenary wasn't a bad man, but if she's basically laughing off recorded threats from a man who can't intimidate her anymore, indeed, if she was familiar with the content before hearing the tape, then we really have nothing to say this was anything but a consensual relationship. Dangerous, perhaps, but she seems to like her men dangerous. She might still be hiding something, but about this we have no reason to doubt her. Which means we gotta go back to our favorite person this episode, Titus Hardy. Christ, I didn't stockpile enough bourbon for this. Pardon me, doing serious cop shit, coming through. Now, much as I'm enjoying the beat, it doesn't seem anybody's reacting to the boombox, so I turn it off for now. We'll get back to that, friend, don't you worry.
It's you again. What is it?
Mr. Hardy, would you care to revise your statement? Or, in the immortal words of Sam Gerard as played by Tommy Lee Jones, would you like to change your bullshit story? Now, he can rant about it all he wants. For whatever reason, Clausier's not playing along. Unless she's got the mother of all poker faces, she seems to dig what our mercenary was going for. There's a lot going on here. Titus's sense of betrayal is genuine. He acts like he's detached, but he probably feels something for her, even if it's misplaced. You don't put all this work into a cover story for some girl you had a fling with. Now, girls in over their head do sometimes do dumb shit, but come on. She's 28 doing hard drugs with a mercenary almost old enough to be your dad. Starting to think Titus hasn't quite accepted who she is and what she's really like. Thanks, Rhetoric. I was hoping someone would point that out. The energy's fading. They're getting tired of the dance, and frankly, so am I. The thing about lying is it takes a lot of work to keep doing it. And if your story isn't airtight, then you work that much harder to hold it together, especially if the cops just keep getting nosier. Hoping to push past this with beer. Ain't gonna work, man. You're the ones in over your heads, and it's high time you faced it. Rhetoric gives us a pretty good chance, but we've blown those odds before. Fingers crossed. Nice. Titus might be too proud to crack, but his boys are another matter. So these guys think they're speaking for Martinez, huh? Well, let's remind them what they're saying on its behalf. Kim gets where we're going with this. Had a little debate about what to say here, but this felt like the strongest argument. Shanky's trying to sound tough, but Eugene knows better. Admitting that means justice in this town depends on who you work for. And when we say justice, we mean they hang you and leave you out there for the fucking crows. Theo hasn't said much, but he's armed, and he knows what we're doing. Gotta stay focused. Angus is the weak link here. He knows better. They all do. And Titus can't keep them in line forever. Composure knows he's losing this. And like that, it all comes out. He's covering for her, for Clausier. All this was to draw suspicion to them, and keep it off her. Time to come clean, Titus. We got him, Kim. Let's get some answers. It's a world of difference. The macho union man is gone. All that's left is the truth, or what he knows of it. Girls, plural. There's a new detail. One was Clausier. Who's the other? Let's clear the air now. What exactly happened? In spite of their lack of professionalism, Titus knows a bit of what he's talking about. The politician with the dead hooker, but the other way around this time. Clausier had come downstairs, obviously wasted, and he knew something was wrong. The Merc had been shot through the window. That's why the window looked new. It had to be replaced. It begs the question of why go through all this. Titus claims that Clausier's in some kind of trouble, that she can't afford to be pinned to a crime. Someone from the moral intern is after her, and if she's officially brought in for questioning, she's as good as dead. But what could a self-described washed-up disco has-been be hiding from? More curiously, it seems like the idea for the cover-up didn't come from Titus. He approved of it, but it was mostly the work of this other girl he's talking about. The missing 8th Hardy, the drug runner. He won't say it, of course, but that was pretty far from a no, and I think we can assume he's not going to tell us anything more for now. So they were having sex and the shot came from outside. Somebody in the balcony, maybe? Of course, the bigger question is who did the shooting, and who were they aiming at? The mercenary or Clausier? Both of them had pasts that could have come calling. It's not a bad idea. If it was a rifle bullet, the shot could have come from an adjoining building, or even further away. Might be time to finally cross the bridge and explore further. For all I thought Titus was just a jealous redneck, and he certainly acted the part, it seems like he genuinely wanted to protect her from the people chasing her. He says it's a Martinez thing, looking after the lost and the cast-offs, and he's hoping that we don't have to cart her away, but he doesn't seem ready to stop us anymore. Right. Much as I tire of the back and forth, we need to talk to Clausier again. Volition had her pegged. She was holding out on us. Now, she might have had a good reason for it. Perhaps she just saw us as part of the moral intern. Or perhaps she's more involved with his murder than we know. Whatever the case, there's a lot more to her than we assumed at first. And it's time we get the whole truth out of her, or as much of it as we can.
It's always good to see you.
She knows why we're back. Some part of her knew, right from the start. Maybe that's why she didn't go along with the Hardys. She knew this wasn't going away. It's hard to say that she's actively using us, more that our thoughts are trying to give her more slack than they probably should. That's how it is. The old world. That's what she's afraid of. The world we represent. It was discussed earlier. The RCM's power flows from the moral intern, and anybody we arrest gets sent to their courts. And she's convinced they'll kill her if she shows up in their databases, even as just a witness to a murder. Here we go. She believes it didn't have anything to do with her, precisely because she went to ground and they couldn't find her. So, that weird hunch we had, way back when we had our conversation with the dead man, it was right. They were having sex when he died. The bullet hit him in his open mouth, punching through to his brain. Death was instantaneous. In the panic, she thought the shooter was going for her, kept waiting for another shot. In hindsight, the fact that the bullet came from outside recontextualizes why she's out here. Either she's in despair and willingly giving the shooter another chance, or she knows another shot isn't coming. So that's why she was wasted. After he died, she freaked out and, junkie that she is, did his line of cocaine. I mean, the man she was having sex with fell down on top of her dead. You're not going to be thinking clearly in that situation. She's run out of road. That's why she turned to the Union. We really should ask what she did to make her so sure the moral intern wants her dead. But let's establish a clear chain of events first. It doesn't sound like anybody heard the shot, or knew what had happened until she ran downstairs. She mentions a Ruby, someone whose name we haven't heard before. Bingo, there's our 8th Hardy, the actual leader of the group. Titus is a spokesperson and corrals the others, but he defers to her. This Ruby organized the lynching like she did the drug trade, and everything else the Hardys have their mitts on. Hiding the cause of death is tricky, but Ruby knew what to do, with Clausier's help. Kim explains that they wanted it to look like he died hanging, while the body was still warm. Missed a random check on visual calculus. Maybe a comment on something we saw earlier that didn't add up. So while he was hanging in the bathroom, Clausier dressed him, and Ruby went out to round up the troops, tell them what the plan was. And now Ruby's gone into hiding, probably to prevent from being questioned. Logic raises an interesting point. Protecting Clausier is one thing, but why would this Ruby try to cover up someone else's murder? Nobody seemed to have heard the shot, so how would Ruby know something was wrong? Of course, Volition counters that this draws attention away from Clausier, who may not be personally the shooter, but may still be involved. Whatever the case, in addition to finding the shooter, we need to find Ruby, and figure out what's really going on. It's hard to say she was in the best position to hear the shot, but if she didn't hear it that well, then it may have come from further away. But we have to ask, if she was in so much trouble, why risk calling the cops? She repeats her claim from before, that nobody else was calling and the body just kept hanging there, stripped and abused. Volition seems to think the call was a lie, too. Can we really trust her on that? Her details were rather specific. Perhaps Volition's just getting paranoid now. It's worth taking another look at the window, in light of what we know. I forgot to do it this time, unfortunately, but we'll make sure to check it out soon. It might be possible to see other vantage points from it. It's time for the question we've been dancing around here. What did she do to get the moral intern chasing her? I'll admit I didn't see this answer coming, and maybe that's why they had her do it. Corporate espionage. She infiltrated companies and stole information from them, and her targets are powerful enough to destroy her if they catch her. So it sounds like someone pulled a burn notice on her, or maybe she just got caught. Either way, now her employers and her opponents are chasing her. We're not speaking in abstract costs here. She directly got many people fired, or worse, and she knows it. One of them even committed suicide. How do we deal with the misery in our lives, so much of it self-inflicted? From the way we woke up a few days ago, I'd say we didn't. We've all got things in our past we're not proud of, but at the comparatively young age of 28, Clausier's done enough for a few lifetimes worth of guilt, assuming she does feel it. She seems pretty sure the shooting isn't about her. And even if it is, going after a banking conglomerate is a bit outside our scope, at least with what little we know. So, what now? Are we actually done with her, or is she still hiding something from us? She might try to run again. Volition seems to think we can shake drama out of covering for her. The dreaded 72, but we did get a big boost. Well, I was hoping for a more honest assessment, but drama has a rather sharp turnaround. Now he's the one accusing her of everything and calling for her to be arrested. It's so sudden that even Volition wants to pump the brakes. It's one thing to suspect she's hiding something still, it's another thing to accuse her of the murder. That's a bridge I'm not willing to cross yet. Granted, we can't completely rule it out, but stick with the facts. It's unlikely she whipped out a Belle McGrave mid-coitus, stuck it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. We just don't know enough to point fingers. We're not quite done with her, but we'll be back to ask her a couple of these. I suspect she won't be running on us just yet. Inland Empire taking a victory lap for its weird little vision. Love really did do him in, just not in the way we were expecting. Maybe by sheer chance. She doesn't want to think it was love. Doesn't want to believe that someone close to her died for it. She doesn't know if it was real, but it'd be a very easy no if it weren't. Now, at this point, I just had a brain fart and forgot to check the window. Like I said, we'll get back to that probably next episode. There's two other quick things to do first. Ask Titus about Ruby, and call Alice about that serial number.
It's you again. What is it?
Starting to get some deja vu meeting this guy, but at least we're not casually tossing off threats. For the moment. But look, you take the progress where you can get it. Anyway, a lot of options here, and I don't think he'll react well to any of them. Sure enough, he's not telling us anything about her. Like Clausier, he views us as a proxy for the moral intern, and he might not even be wrong about that. Now, there's a little contradiction here I find curious. Titus is acting like it's in Martinet's nature to look after runaways and rejects, but Ruby used the situation for political purposes. If Titus wants a theory that Ruby might be involved in the killing, well, that's a little out of our grasp at the moment, but Logic's point earlier that she seemed to know what had happened is valid. At the very least, she was ready to help cover it up, which means we need to talk to her. Coming up on the end of the video here, just gonna jump on the radio and call Alice real quick. Alice! Hope the weather's better by you. So, what do you got for us? Oh, I was born ready. Hit us. And she comes through. We've got a real name for Lely. Alice Courtnire. Sounds like our dead man had it rough coming into this world, too. Poor guy's real parents abandoned him in a leaf compactor. He spent his childhood with a foster family. Inland Empire thinks that's why he was cagey about his name. It's a past he had no control over. In any case, he went to military school at age 17 and served Aranye for a while. Where it gets weird is the paper trail ends in Seminane. The armor shows up there, but there are no records of his time with Krenel, and nothing, other than his body, to prove that he entered Revachol at all. Really, the lack of detail is speaking volumes here. This guy fell through the cracks his whole life and turned to the one thing he could do. Be a paid killer. Kim's pleased, and rightly so. A name and a service record helps us follow where he really was, and we'll know we're on the right track when we find what fits in the gaps. And besides, if we're solving his murder, we should know who he really is and how he got here. Alice, you did great. Thanks for the help. I knew she'd come through. She's gonna turn out to be this game's best girl, mark my words. So, that about wraps it up. I do apologize for the unplanned hiatus. Gonna try to get back on a weekly schedule, but good games do keep coming out. Rather annoying, that. But I am committed to finishing this, however long it takes me. Next time we go looking for Ruby and the shooter, check that window out one more time, and finally explore outside downtown Martinez. But after a long 57 minutes of sex, lies, dark pasts, and death, what's the best possible way to end this? It's Revachol, baby. Even in the gutter, you make your own fun. That's fun. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Stay safe, and see you next time.